The war had become a machine, and Anakin Skywalker was one of its most efficient parts. 6 months before the Battle of Coruscant, I watched him descend through the smoke-choked skies of Muunilinst. The industrial world's banking towers rose like surgical instruments against the red horizon. The Separatists had fortified the financial district, believing their vaults could shield them from Republic justice. They were wrong. Anakin led the assault with his characteristic precision, not the wild, passionate heroics that defined him in the war's early days, but something colder, calculated. The 500 first moved through the district like a blade through silk, and within 6 hours, the Separatist command structure had collapsed. But the mission's true discovery came later, in silence. In the private vaults of the late Hego Damask, a Muun banker who had died decades earlier, Anakin found a hidden chamber. The door was unmarked, protected by a lock that required both a numeric code and a specific Force signature. Anakin opened it in 47 seconds. Inside, there were no glowing holocrons, no ancient artifacts of obvious power, only shelves. Dozens of shelves lined with physical journals, their pages yellowed with age, their covers bound in what looked like treated leather. Some were handwritten in ancient Sith script, others in basic. Anakin lifted one carefully, as if it might disintegrate. I could see it in his eyes, the same expression he wore when he built his pod racer as a child, when he first understood how machines spoke to him in languages other people couldn't hear. But these weren't blueprints or schematics. They were something far more dangerous. He began to read. 3 days later, aboard the Resolute, Anakin's quarters. The flesh is not separate from the Force. It is the Force made manifest, Anakin read aloud, his finger tracing lines of elegant Muun script. To heal is to impose will upon reality. To prevent death is to convince the universe itself that the ending has not yet been written. He sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by 17 journals. He'd barely slept. His eyes moved rapidly across the pages, absorbing, connecting, hungering. The author, this Hego Damask, this banker who called himself Darth Plagueis, had pursued an obsession, the conquest of death itself. Not through cybernetics like Grievous, not through mechanical augmentation that stripped away the soul, but through the Force itself, bending the living energy of the universe to serve the will of the practitioner. The journals described experiments spanning decades. Dying tissue coaxed back to life. Wounds sealed through focused meditation. Consciousness maintained beyond the body's natural collapse. Not by replacing the flesh with machinery, but by commanding the Force itself to sustain what should have ended. And in the margins, written in a different hand, were corrections, refinements, a student's notes. Someone else had studied these journals after Damask's death. Someone who had tried and failed to master the final technique. Anakin turned a page and found a passage that made his breath catch. The Jedi speak of letting go, of accepting death as part of the cosmic cycle. They are fools. The Force does not demand surrender. It rewards strength. Will shapes reality. I have proven this. But the final barrier remains. To impose my will not merely on tissue, but on fate itself. My apprentice believes it impossible. He lacks vision. Beneath it, in the second hand, the old fool died before teaching me, but I will succeed where he failed. I must. Anakin sat back, his jaw tight. He'd been having the dreams again. Padmé, screaming in agony. Padmé, dying in childbirth, her blood pooling beneath her as their children cried. The visions came every night now, so vivid he could smell the sterile air of the medical bay, could feel her hand going cold in his. The Jedi would tell him to release his attachment, to trust in the Force's will. Master Yoda's voice echoed in his memory. Death is a natural part of life. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. But Padmé wasn't transforming. She was dying, being stolen from him. And now, holding these journals, Anakin understood something the Jedi refused to accept. The Force could be commanded. Reality could be rewritten. Death could be refused. Not through cybernetics that replaced life with machinery, but through will, pure, absolute will channeled through the Force to sustain the living spirit in its proper vessel. He looked at his hands. He wasn't going to let go. He was going to impose a different ending. Coruscant, the Uskru district, lower levels. The lab was a disaster. Peeling walls, flickering lights, the smell of industrial lubricant and decay. Perfect. Anonymous. No one from the temple would ever think to look for a Jedi Knight here, among the addicts and the forgotten. Anakin paid the Rhodian landlord in untraceable credits and set to work. He started small. A dying hawk bat, its wing shattered by a speeder collision. He laid it on the surgical table he'd purchased from a black-market medical supplier and opened Plagueis' journal to page 247. The technique wasn't mechanical. It was spiritual, or perhaps beyond the distinction entirely. Anakin closed his eyes and reached into the Force, feeling the hawk bat's presence. A small, flickering flame guttering toward darkness. The wing was ruined, the bones shattered, infection spreading. In nature, the creature would die within hours. But Anakin's will said otherwise. He focused, not on the tissue itself, but on his intention. The universe could be shaped by those strong enough to shape it. Plagueis had proven this. The Sith had known it for millennia. Even the Jedi used the Force to move objects, to influence minds. They simply lacked the courage to take the final step. Anakin commanded the Force to flow through the dying tissue. Not a request. Not a meditation. A demand. The hawk bat's wing twitched. Bone began to knit. Torn muscle fibers reconnected, guided by Anakin's absolute certainty that this was how reality would unfold. The infection retreated, cells regenerating faster than they died, because Anakin's will declared it so. The creature's breathing steadied. Its eyes opened. 3 hours later, it flew. Anakin stood in the center of the lab, watching it circle the ceiling, and felt something shift inside him. Not triumph, revelation. The Jedi were wrong. Death wasn't inevitable. It was a choice. The choice to surrender, to let the universe decide your fate. Anakin would never make that choice. The Outer Rim sieges. Month 4. The clone trooper's name was Helix. He'd taken a direct hit from a separatist ion cannon, and by the time they pulled him from the wreckage, his heart had stopped. 4 minutes without oxygen. Irreversible brain damage by any medical standard. The medics had already moved on to the next soldier. Anakin knelt beside the body. "Sir?" Captain Rex appeared at his shoulder, confused. "He's gone." "No." Anakin's voice was quiet, but absolute. "He's not." He placed his hands on Helix's chest and reached into the Force, not to the body, but to the man. The presence that had been Helix still lingered, hovering at the threshold between life and dissolution. Anakin seized that presence and pulled. Not gently. Not with a Jedi's detached compassion. With raw, unyielding will. "You will return." I command it." The Force bent around his intention like light around a gravity well. Helix's spirit, drifting toward the cosmic whole, was dragged back into his body. Tissue regenerated, synapses fired. The heart, responding to Anakin's absolute certainty, began to beat. Helix's chest arched, his eyes shot open, gasping. The heart monitor shrieked back to life. The medics stared in disbelief. Rex took a step back, and for the first time in their years serving together, Anakin heard something new in the captain's voice. Fear. "General, what did you do?" Anakin stood, his hands trembling, not from exhaustion, but from the intoxication of absolute power. He had just overruled the universe itself. "I saved him," Anakin said. "Get him stabilized." As he walked away, Rex followed at a distance. "Sir, if you can bring men back from the dead—" "I didn't bring him back from the dead, Rex." Anakin stopped, turning. His eyes were bright, feverish. "I refused to let him die. There's a difference." "What difference?" Anakin didn't answer. He couldn't explain it in words Rex would understand. Grievous had tried to conquer death through machinery, replacing his failing organic body piece by piece until almost nothing remained. He'd become a monster, a shell animated by hatred, divorced from the Force, barely alive in any meaningful sense. But Anakin was doing something different. He wasn't replacing life with machinery. He was using the Force itself to sustain life, to impose his will upon the natural order. It wasn't degradation. It was evolution. Coruscant. Anakin and Padmé's apartment. She was sleeping when he returned, curled on her side, one hand resting on the small swell of her belly. 4 months along. Healthy, the medroid said. No complications detected. But Anakin had seen the vision again last night. Clearer than ever. More certain. He sat on the edge of the bed, watching her breathe, and felt the weight of his discovery settle over him. He no longer feared her death, because he would not allow it. He no longer feared her death, because he would not allow it. If her heart stopped during labor, he would restart it. If she hemorrhaged, he would seal the wounds through sheer force of will. If her spirit began to slip away, he would seize it and command it to remain. The universe would bend to his intention, or he would shatter it trying. Padmé stirred, her eyes opening. "Ani? I'm here." He took her hand, and his grip was warm, certain. "You were gone for 3 days." "I know. I'm sorry." She studied his face, and something in her expression shifted. A flicker of concern. "You seem different." "I'm better," he said, and he meant it. "Everything's going to be fine, Padmé. I promise." She didn't look convinced, but she was too tired to press. She'd learned, over the years, that Anakin carried weights he couldn't always share. "Come to bed," she whispered. He did, and for the first time in months, he slept without nightmares. Because nightmares were just another form of surrender. And Anakin Skywalker would never surrender again. Palpatine's office. The Senate Tower. The Supreme Chancellor sat behind his desk, hands folded, his expression warm and paternal. The office was dim, lit only by the red glow of Coruscant's sunset through the transparisteel windows. "Anakin," Palpatine said gently, "you look troubled, my boy." Anakin stood in the center of the room, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. "I need to ask you something, Chancellor." "Of course, anything." "How long have you been a Sith Lord?" The room went silent. Palpatine's smile didn't falter, But something changed in his eyes, a flicker of calculation, of recalibration. I'm afraid I don't understand. I think you do. Anakin stepped closer. Hego Damask, Darth Plagueis, your master. The journals in his vault on Muunilinst, you knew they were there. You've been looking for them for years. The silence stretched. Then, slowly, Palpatine leaned back in his chair. Ah. His voice was softer now, almost admiring. So you found them. I did. And what did you learn, Anakin? That you killed him before he could teach you the final technique. That you've been searching for the secret to immortality ever since. Anakin's voice was calm, analytical. But you couldn't master it. You don't have the strength. Palpatine's expression hardened slightly. Strength? My dear boy, I have conquered the Republic from within. I've orchestrated a galactic war. I've turned the Jedi into executioners of their own obsolescence. Do not lecture me about strength. You have cunning, strategy, manipulation. Anakin shook his head. But you don't have what Plagueis had. The ability to impose your will on the Force itself, to command reality to obey. And you think you do? I know I do. I've already done it. Palpatine leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with sudden interest. Show me. No. The word hung in the air like a blade. Palpatine's smile returned, but it was colder now. Anakin, I understand your fear. Padmé's life hangs in the balance, but only through me can you achieve the power you seek. Only through the dark side. I don't need the dark side, Anakin interrupted. And I don't need you. You're making a mistake. The mistake was thinking you had anything left to teach me. Anakin turned toward the door. Stay away from me, Chancellor. Stay away from Padmé. If you trigger whatever plan you have for the clones, I'll know, and I'll stop you. Anakin! He stopped at the door, but didn't turn. Palpatine's voice dropped, stripped of all pretense. If you walk out that door, you become my enemy. Then we're enemies. Anakin left. Behind him, Palpatine sat alone in his office, his fingers drumming on the desk. For the first time in decades, his carefully constructed plan had encountered a variable he couldn't control. Anakin Skywalker had become unpredictable, dangerous. And that meant he had to be eliminated, or broken, before he could threaten everything Palpatine had built. The Sith Lord reached for his comlink. Commander Cody, he said softly, prepare to execute Order 66, but wait for my signal. And when the time comes, ensure Skywalker is included in the purge. Padmé's apartment, 2 hours later. Anakin, you can't be serious. Padmé stood in the center of the living room, her arms wrapped protectively around her belly, staring at the journals spread across the table. Anakin had told her everything. Plagueis, Palpatine, the experiments, his plan to confront the Sith Lord. I'm completely serious, Anakin said. Palpatine has been playing both sides of this war from the beginning. He's manipulating the Senate, the Jedi, the Separatists, all of it. Then we go to the Council. We expose him. The Council won't believe me, or they will, and they'll do something reckless that gets everyone killed. He crossed to her, taking her hands. I need to handle this my way. By using Sith techniques? Her voice shook with a mixture of fear and anger. Anakin, these journals, this isn't the Jedi way. This is dark science. It's unnatural. The Jedi way is to let you die. His grip tightened. To trust in the Force. To let go. I won't do it, Padmé. I can't. Tears welled in her eyes. So instead, you'll become what? A Sith? Another Palpatine? I'm not using the dark side. I'm using the Force, the whole Force, not the sanitized version the Jedi teach. He released her hands and gestured at the journals. Plagueis was wrong about many things, but he understood something the Jedi refused to accept. The Force responds to will. Absolute will, channeled properly, can reshape reality. And what does that cost, Ani? What does it do to you? It saves you. His voice broke slightly. That's all that matters. Padmé stared at him, and I could see the woman who had loved him since they were children warring with the senator who had sworn to uphold democracy and law. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. "Form a resistance. People I trust. Ahsoka, Rex, others. We'll stop Palpatine before he can consolidate power." He turned to the window, looking out over the city. "And then, we rebuild. No Jedi dogma, no Sith tyranny, something better." "You're talking about tearing down everything." "I'm talking about building something that doesn't sacrifice people to ideology." Padmé sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "I love you, Ani, but I'm terrified you're losing yourself." He knelt before her, cupping her face gently. "I'm not losing myself. I'm becoming what I was always meant to be, strong enough to protect the people I love." She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Promise me you won't become him. Promise me you won't become Palpatine." "I promise." But even as he said it, I could see the seeds of doubt in her eyes. Secure transmission. Encrypted channel. Ahsoka Tano's hologram flickered to life. She looked older than when she'd left the Order. Harder, more independent, but still unmistakably herself. "Sky Guy," she said, arms crossed, "this better be important. Palpatine is the Sith Lord." She went very still. "He's been orchestrating the war from both sides, and he's planning something, an attack on the Jedi. Soon." Ahsoka's expression hardened. "You have proof?" "His master's journals, strategic analysis, and my own investigation." Anakin leaned forward. "Ahsoka, the clones have control chips in their heads, biochips that can override their free will. Palpatine can turn the entire Grand Army against us with a single command." She was silent for a long moment. "You're asking me to betray the Republic. I'm asking you to save it. The real Republic, not Palpatine's puppet state." "And the Council?" "They'll try to arrest him. He'll slaughter them." Anakin's voice was grim. "I've seen how powerful he is, Ahsoka. We need to be smarter than a frontal assault." She studied him through the hologram, and I could see her weighing her trust in him against the magnitude of what he was asking. "What's your plan?" "Get the people we trust out of the blast radius. Remove the control chips where we can. And when Palpatine makes his move, we're ready to respond. Not as Jedi, not as soldiers, but as something new." "You're talking about a third faction." "I'm talking about survival." Ahsoka sighed, running a hand over her montrals. "You know this is insane." "Yeah. And you're doing it anyway." "Yeah." A faint smile crossed her face. "Still the same Sky Guy." She straightened. "I'm in. But Anakin, if this goes wrong, if you're wrong about Palpatine—" "I'm not wrong." "Then we better move fast. Because if the Chancellor really is a Sith Lord, he's not going to wait forever." The hologram winked out. Coruscant. The Jedi Temple. Day of Order 66. The alarm wasn't a sound. It was a disturbance in the Force, a sudden, massive shift, like the galaxy itself had screamed. Anakin was in the temple archives when he felt it. Thousands of presences winking out across the stars. Jedi, dying in the same instant, betrayed by the soldiers they trusted. Order 66. He ran. The main entrance was already chaos. Clone troopers poured through the gates, their blasters cutting down Jedi before they could even process what was happening. Masters fell beside Padawans, knights beside younglings, the marble floors slick with blood. Anakin's lightsaber ignited, and he moved. Not with a Jedi's restraint, but with absolute, furious precision. He deflected blaster bolts, sending them back into the ranks of attackers. He used the Force to hurl troopers into walls, to crush their weapons, to drive them back through sheer overwhelming power. But he wasn't trying to kill them. These were good soldiers following corrupted orders. They deserved better than to die as Palpatine's puppets. "Rex!" he shouted into his comlink. "West Corridor, now!" Captain Rex appeared with a squad of loyalists, clones whose inhibitor chips Anakin and Ahsoka had quietly removed over the past weeks. They formed a defensive perimeter, buying precious seconds. "Younglings?" Rex demanded, his voice tight. "Residential wing. 43 confirmed." Anakin cut down a battle droid that had joined the assault. "Get them to the lower hangar. Ship's waiting." "What about the Council?" Anakin paused, reaching out through the Force. He could feel them, Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, others. They were fighting, scattered across the temple and the city. And they were losing. "They'll have to fend for themselves," Anakin said grimly. "Save the children. Go." Rex hesitated only a fraction of a second before nodding. His squad moved deeper into the temple. Anakin stood alone in the grand hallway, surrounded by bodies. Jedi he'd known, trained with, fought beside. He felt a deep, cold fury settle into his bones. Palpatine would pay for this. The Chancellor's suite. 2 hours later. Palpatine stood at the window, watching smoke rise from the temple. His hands were clasped behind his back, his expression serene. The door opened. "Anakin," he said without turning, "I wondered when you'd arrive." Anakin walked into the room, his robes still scorched from battle, his lightsaber in his hand, but not yet ignited. "It's over, Palpatine." "Is it?" The Chancellor turned, his expression almost amused. "The Jedi are finished. The Republic is secure. And you? You could still have a place in the New Order. At my side." "I'll never stand at your side." "Then you'll kneel before it." Anakin ignited his lightsaber. Palpatine moved faster than any living thing should move. His own blade, red as blood, hidden within his ornate cane, ignited mid-strike, and the two weapons met with a shriek of plasma. They fought across the office, Palpatine with the refined, vicious precision of Makashi, Anakin with the overwhelming power of Jem So. Furniture exploded. Windows shattered. The very air crackled with the intensity of their conflict. "You could have been my greatest triumph," Palpatine snarled, their blades locked. "The chosen one, remade in my image." "I'm nobody's puppet," Anakin roared, forcing him back. Palpatine disengaged, and his hands shot forward. Blue lightning erupted from his fingertips. Not the measured demonstration he'd shown Dooku, but a torrent of raw, dark-side fury designed to reduce Anakin to ash. Anakin raised his hand and caught it. The lightning didn't burn him. It flowed into him, through him, absorbed by the absolute certainty of his will. His body began to glow with an eerie blue light as the Force itself responded to his command. I will not be destroyed. Plagueis' technique. Perfected. Palpatine's eyes widened in genuine shock. Impossible. You never understood it, Anakin said, stepping forward through the storm of lightning. Plagueis tried to teach you, but you couldn't grasp it. You saw power as something to take, to steal. He understood it was something to command. The lightning intensified, but Anakin didn't falter. His presence in the Force expanded, overwhelming, absolute. And then he reached out. Palpatine staggered, gasping, as he felt something fundamental being torn away. Anakin wasn't attacking his body. He was attacking his connection, severing the pathways through which the Force flowed, isolating each midichlorian-rich cell, cutting off the feedback loop that allowed Palpatine to channel the dark side. "No!" Palpatine wheezed. "No, you can't! This is—" "You wanted to live forever," Anakin said coldly. "Congratulations." He completed the severance. Palpatine screamed, a sound of pure existential horror, as the Force abandoned him. Decades of dark side augmentation evaporated in seconds. His body withered, skin sagging, eyes dimming. He collapsed to his knees, suddenly just a frail old man. Powerless. Mortal. Trapped in flesh that would now decay naturally. Denied even the dignity of death in battle. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber and looked down at the broken Sith Lord. "You're going to live a long time, Palpatine," he said quietly. "Long enough to watch everything you built crumble. But you'll never touch the Force again." He turned to leave. "Skywalker." Anakin paused at the door. "Residential wing. 43 confirmed." Anakin cut down a battle droid that had joined the assault. "Get them to the lower hangar. Ship's waiting." "What about the Council?" Anakin paused, reaching out through the Force. He could feel them. Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, others. They were fighting, scattered across the temple and the city. And they were losing. "They'll have to fend for themselves," Anakin said grimly. "Save the children. Go." Rex hesitated only a fraction of a second before nodding. His squad moved deeper into the temple. Anakin stood alone in the grand hallway, surrounded by bodies, Jedi he'd known, trained with, fought beside. He felt a deep, cold fury settle into his bones. Palpatine would pay for this. The Chancellor's suite. 2 hours later. Palpatine stood at the window, watching smoke rise from the temple. His hands were clasped behind his back, his expression serene. The door opened. "Anakin," he said, without turning. "I wondered when you'd arrive." Anakin walked into the room, his robes still scorched from battle, his lightsaber in his hand, but not yet ignited. "It's over, Palpatine." "Is it?" The Chancellor turned, his expression almost amused. "The Jedi are finished. The Republic is secure. And you could still have a place in the new order. At my side." "I'll never stand at your side." "Then you'll kneel before it." Anakin ignited his lightsaber. Palpatine moved faster than any living thing should move. His own blade, red as blood, hidden within his ornate cane, ignited mid-strike, and the two weapons met with a shriek of plasma. They fought across the office, Palpatine with the refined, vicious precision of Makashi, Anakin with the overwhelming power of Jem So. Furniture exploded, windows shattered. The very air crackled with the intensity of their conflict. "You could have been my greatest triumph," Palpatine snarled, their blades locked. "The chosen one, remade, in my image." "I'm nobody's puppet," Anakin roared, forcing him back. Palpatine disengaged, and his hands shot forward. Blue lightning erupted from his fingertips, not the measured demonstration he'd shown Dooku, but a torrent of raw dark side fury designed to reduce Anakin to ash. Anakin raised his hand and caught it. The lightning didn't burn him. It flowed into him, through him, absorbed by the absolute certainty of his will. His body began to glow with an eerie blue light as the Force itself responded to his command. "I will not be destroyed." Plagueis' technique. Perfected. Palpatine's eyes widened in genuine shock. "Impossible." "You never understood it," Anakin said, stepping forward through the storm of lightning. "Plagueis tried to teach you, but you couldn't grasp it. You saw power as something to take, to steal. He understood it was something to command." The lightning intensified, but Anakin didn't falter. His presence in the Force expanded, overwhelming, absolute. And then he reached out. Palpatine staggered, gasping as he felt something fundamental being torn away. Anakin wasn't attacking his body. He was attacking his connection, severing the pathways through which the Force flowed, isolating each midi-chlorian-rich cell, cutting off the feedback loop that allowed Palpatine to channel the dark side. "No!" Palpatine wheezed. "No, you can't! This is—" "You wanted to live forever," Anakin said coldly. "Congratulations." He completed the severance. Palpatine screamed, a sound of pure existential horror, as the Force abandoned him. Decades of dark side augmentation evaporated in seconds. His body withered, skin sagging, eyes dimming. He collapsed to his knees, suddenly just a frail old man. Powerless. Mortal. Trapped in flesh that would now decay naturally, denied even the dignity of death in battle. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber and looked down at the broken Sith Lord. "You're going to live a long time, Palpatine," he said quietly. "Long enough to watch everything you built crumble, but you'll never touch the Force again." He turned to leave. "Skywalker!" Anakin paused at the door. Palpatine's voice was a rasp, stripped of all its honeyed manipulation. You're worse than I ever was. At least I understood what I was." "No," Anakin said without looking back. "You were a parasite. I'm something you never had the vision to become." He left the former Chancellor weeping on the floor. The Jedi Temple, Command Center. When Anakin returned, he found Obi-Wan Kenobi waiting in the ruins of the council chamber. His former master looked haggard, his robes torn, blood on his hands, not his own. He'd fought his way through the temple, trying to save whoever he could. Behind him stood Yoda, leaning heavily on his cane, his ancient eyes filled with sorrow. "Anakin," Obi-Wan said, his voice hoarse, "what have you done?" "I stopped Palpatine. By using the dark side? By using the Force." Anakin met his eyes without flinching. "All of it. Not the half-truths the Council teaches." Yoda's ears drooped. "Arrogance, this is. Hubris. The path to the dark side." "The path to the dark side is what you've been walking for 1,000 years, Anakin interrupted. "Hiding in your temple, serving politicians, ignoring slavery and suffering because it wasn't the Jedi way to intervene. You let the galaxy rot while you meditated on your own purity. And what would you do differently?" Obi-Wan stepped forward, his hand resting on his lightsaber. "Remake the galaxy in your image? Decide who lives and who dies?" I would save people, actually save them, not just offer platitudes about the will of the Force. At what cost? Obi-Wan's voice rose. Anakin, I've seen what you did to Palpatine. You severed him from the Force. That's not a Jedi technique. That's not even a Sith technique. It's abomination. He orchestrated genocide. He deserved worse. Perhaps. Obi-Wan's expression hardened. But who are you to decide? Who gave you the right to play God? The same universe that made me the chosen one. Anakin's eyes blazed. You wanted balance, Master Yoda? Here it is. No more Sith. No more Jedi. Just people strong enough to protect the galaxy without dogma or ideology. Alone you cannot stand, Yoda said gravely. Already. Feel it. I do. Changed you are. The technique you use, consume you, it will. I'm in perfect control. Are you? Obi-Wan took another step closer. Because the Anakin I knew would never speak like this, would never look at me with such coldness. For the first time, Anakin's expression flickered, a shadow of doubt crossing his face. But he crushed it. The Anakin you knew was weak, he said quietly. Afraid. Controlled by the Council's fear of attachment, of power, of actually changing anything. That Anakin would have let Padmé die rather than break the rules. And this Anakin? Obi-Wan's voice broke. What will he become? Anakin didn't answer. He turned to leave. We cannot let you walk away, young Skywalker, Yoda said. Too dangerous. You have become... Anakin stopped. Behind him, he felt Obi-Wan's lightsaber ignite, felt Yoda's presence in the Force sharpen, preparing for battle. His oldest friends, his teachers, ready to kill him, to preserve their dying order. Don't do this, Anakin said, his hand moving to his own weapon. You've left us no choice, Obi-Wan replied, his voice thick with grief. Anakin's lightsaber blazed to life. Then you've already lost. The duel that followed was not a battle. It was a devastation. Obi-Wan came at him with Sorasu's perfect defense, the same technique that had defeated General Grievous. But Anakin had trained with Obi-Wan for over a decade. He knew every pattern, every counter, every weakness. He shattered Obi-Wan's guard in 17 seconds. Yoda attacked next, using his incredible speed and Force-enhanced agility. For a moment, he actually drove Anakin back, the ancient Jedi's centuries of experience showing. But Anakin reached into the Force, not to augment his body, but to impose his will on reality itself. Gravity shifted. The air thickened. Yoda's next leap fell short, his connection to the Force disrupted by Anakin's overwhelming presence. Anakin didn't kill them, but he could have. He stood over Obi-Wan and Yoda, both disarmed, both defeated, and he felt nothing. No triumph, no grief. Just cold certainty. This is where it ends, Anakin said quietly. The Jedi Order dies tonight, not by Palpatine's hand, by its own obsolescence. Anakin? Obi-Wan looked up at him, blood trickling from his temple. Please, you're my brother. I was. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber. But that man died when you chose the Order over him. When all of you did. He turned and walked away, leaving them broken in the ruins of their temple. Behind him, Obi-Wan began to weep. 3 months later, the Imperial Palace. The galaxy had not fallen into chaos. It had fallen into perfect, terrible order. Anakin Skywalker sat on a throne of polished stone, his hands resting on the armrests, his eyes, now burning white like captured stars, fixed on the viewport overlooking Coruscant. The Empire. His Empire. Not built on Palpatine's cruelty or the Jedi's hypocrisy, but on absolute certainty. The war was over. The separatists dissolved. The corrupt senators removed. The inefficient bureaucracies streamlined. And death itself negotiable. Padmé had given birth 2 months ago. Twins, Luke and Leia, healthy and strong. But the labor had been difficult. Her heart had stopped twice. Twice Anakin had refused to accept it. He'd poured his will into her, commanding her spirit to remain, forcing her body to repair itself. And it had worked. She lived. But at a cost. Now she rested in a medical chamber behind the throne room, suspended in a field of force energy that kept her cells in perpetual regeneration. She would never age, never sicken, never leave him. When she woke, she screamed, begged him to let her go, to let her be human. He'd calmed her, soothed her, made her understand. Eventually, she stopped screaming. Now she just stared at the ceiling, her eyes empty. But she was alive. That was all that mattered. The final confrontation. The throne room doors opened, and Obi-Wan Kenobi entered. He looked older, grayer, worn by months of evading Anakin's enforcers. He'd been hiding on Tatooine, watching over Luke and Leia from a distance until Anakin's agents finally tracked him down. But Anakin had allowed him to come, had sent word that he wanted to speak. One last time. Anakin didn't turn from the viewport. "Master?" "Don't call me that." Obi-Wan's voice was rough. "I failed you. I don't deserve the title." "You failed yourself." Anakin finally looked at him. "By clinging to the Order's lies instead of seeing the truth." "And what truth is that? That might makes right? That the strong can impose their will on the universe without consequence? That death is not inevitable. That suffering can be ended. That the galaxy doesn't need teachers. It needs protectors." Obi-Wan looked past him toward the chamber where Padmé slept. "You saved her. I've heard." "Yes." "But at what cost, Anakin? She's not living. She's being sustained by your will. The moment you falter, the moment your concentration breaks." "I won't falter." "Everyone falters. You're not a god." Anakin's eyes blazed brighter. "Then what am I, Master? The chosen one? The Jedi said I would bring balance. Well, here it is. No Sith, no Jedi, just order." "This isn't balance," Obi-Wan's voice broke. "Balance isn't control, it's harmony, It's a lie the Jedi told themselves while the galaxy burned. Anakin stood, and his presence in the Force was overwhelming, crushing. "I have ended war, ended corruption. I am extending life to those who deserve it, punishing those who would threaten peace. I am doing what the Jedi never had the courage to do." Obi-Wan stared at him, and tears began to stream down his face. "You were my brother, Anakin," he whispered. "I loved you." "I know. But this thing you've become—" Obi-Wan drew his lightsaber. "I can't let it continue. Even if it costs me my life, I have to try to stop you." Anakin looked at him with something that might have been pity. "You already tried, Obi-Wan, in the temple. Do you really want to fail again?" "I have to try." "Then try." Obi-Wan attacked with everything he had. Decades of experience, perfect form, desperate determination. Anakin disarmed him in 3 moves. The lightsaber clattered to the floor, and Obi-Wan fell to his knees. Anakin stood over him, his own blade humming inches from Obi-Wan's neck. "I could kill you," Anakin said softly. "End your suffering. But I won't. Because you're going to live, Obi-Wan. You're going to watch. You're going to see what I build. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not for years, you're going to understand that I was right." He deactivated his lightsaber. "Now leave, and don't come back." Obi-Wan looked up at him, broken and weeping. "You won, Anakin," he said hoarsely. "But you've lost everything that made you human." Humanity is overrated. Obi-Wan stood on shaking legs, retrieved his weapon, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he paused. "The younglings you saved," he said quietly. "Luke and Leia. What will you teach them?" Anakin's expression didn't change. That they never have to be afraid. That death is a choice. That the strong protect the weak. And when they're old enough to question you, to resist, they won't. Obi-Wan closed his eyes. "Then you truly have become what you feared most." He left. Anakin stood alone in his throne room, the emperor of a silent galaxy. Epilogue. That night, Anakin stood in Padmé's chamber, his hand glowing with soft white light as he wove the Force through her cells, maintaining the delicate balance that kept her suspended between life and stasis. She didn't dream anymore, didn't speak, but her heart beat. Her lungs breathed. She was alive. And across the galaxy, 17,000 others lived in similar suspension. Politicians, scientists, artists, engineers, the essential people, the ones the galaxy needed, all preserved by Anakin's will, all utterly, perfectly controlled. In orbit, Ahsoka Tano watched the planet below, her ship hidden in the shadow of a moon. She'd refused to join Anakin's empire, refused to become part of his perfect order. She would resist, somehow, even if it took the rest of her life. I watched Anakin Skywalker, the immortal emperor, stand over his sleeping wife, his eyes burning with captured starlight. He had defeated the Sith, shattered the Jedi, conquered death itself. And in doing so, he'd created a galaxy more silent, more lifeless than anything Palpatine could have imagined. He had won, and the universe would never forgive him.